What's going on, my boys? It's Nick, bringing you on the channel today my Springans deck profile for the post-Photon Hypernova and post-Maze of Memories format. I do want to apologize for taking so long to bring you guys my final build of this deck. It's been something that I hold pretty dear to my heart because Springans is one of the earlier decks that I brought to my channel when I first started doing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content on YouTube. And I really wanted to make sure that this deck worked and worked well before bringing you guys, like, you know, some wishy-washy build, so to speak. But with that being said, guys, welcome. My name is Nick. We do Yu-Gi-Oh! Content mainly focused around rogue decks and casual decks alike. So if those are things that you're interested in, then I highly encourage you smash that subscribe button because we are working our way to 1,000 subs and I cannot get there without your help. We tend to focus a lot on a lot of content that most other Yu-Gi-Tubers don't really focus on, and I think that's what really makes my channel stand out the most. In addition to doing deck profiles, we often do combo tutorials as well as live duel videos. I am still working on getting a live duel video up on the channel soon. I know that I've covered a lot of different decks, and I want to showcase these decks to you guys in action on the channel, so stay tuned for that. But with that being said, guys, this Springans deck is amazing. The Springans got two brand new cards out of Photon Hypernova, a spell card as well as an extra deck monster that we'll cover when we get to the extra deck. But I don't want to waste any more of your time, guys. We're going to dive headfirst into the Great Sand Sea Gold Golgonda, where the Springans reside. So we're going to start things off with the monster cards, of course. This is a 44 card list. Now it's a bit chunky. However, I couldn't really get it any less than that number, and I'll explain why throughout the profile. But we're going to lead things off with triple copies of Springans Kit. Springans Kit, you know, before in my older profiles, I only ran 2 copies of this card. But now this card has definitely earned its 3F spot for the simple reason that she's still one of the best Springans to normal summon in this deck. One of the problems that I have with the Springans monsters that are the machine type fire attribute ones is that a lot of them require setup. Like, they're not very good normal summons, especially if you're going first and it's like turn 0. At least Springans Kit does get you like somewhat of a plus when she's summoned. Basically, when she's normal or specialed, you get to add a branded spell or trap from the deck, graveyard, or that's banished to your hand, but then you take a card from your hand, put it on the bottom of the deck. So you don't really plus, it's more like a break even, but she's one of the few Springans that actually does something like proactive turn 0, which I like. In addition to that, though, she's the only extender that the archetype has, believe it or not. Basically, if there's a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material in the graveyard, or on the field, you can special summon the Kit from your hand. So we max out on triple copies of Kit. She's very important in this particular build. But moving on to the machine type Springans, we're on triple copies of Rocky, 2 copies of Brothers, 1 Pador, 2 Branga. Let me see if I can try and fit all this on the camera. And then 2 Captain Sargas. So, we're going to talk about all of these together because they actually share a effect across the board. So, each machine attribute fire type Springans monster, machine type fire attribute, excuse me. Each machine Springans monster shares a similar effect across the board. And that effect is that you can attach them as material to a Springans Xyz you control from the field, your hand, or the graveyard. Now, every single machine Springans has that same ability, which I think is really unique. So they pretty much like jump onto any Springans Xyz as material from pretty much anywhere, which I think is really cool. Now, Rocky, we max out on triple copies of him because he's pretty much like your secondary starter somewhat behind Kit, whereas Rocky, upon normal or special, lets you target a Springans monster in grave or a Great Sand Sea Gold Golgonda, which is the Springans field spell, and adds it to your hand. So we max out on him. We play 2 copies of Brothers. When Brothers is sent to the graveyard from the hand or deck, he's pretty much a monster reborn for the archetype. Pador, we just play 1 copy of him. He's honestly like not that great, but you pretty much play him because you need the additional name. But what he does is he contributes himself to target any Springans monster in grave and special summon it. And then you have 2 copies of Branga and then 2 Sargas. The 2 Branga, it can banish itself and another Springans monster from grave to add any Springans card from deck to hand. So it serves as like a roto for the theme, which is pretty cool. And then Captain Sargas, if he's attached to a Springans Xyz, he grants that Springans Xyz an additional 500 attack And while he's on the field, you can during the opponent's turn as a quick effect, you can detach a material from any Xyz you control to target a card in the field and destroy it. So he's pretty much like removal, almost like a Trident during the opponent's turn. Branda gives the deck more consistency by banishing itself and another monster from grave to get you a search. And then Brothers is like a Reborn along with Pador, and then Rocky is kind of like, gives you that recurability. So all of these combined are pretty much the ratios that we run on this particular list. And so far I've been very happy with the ratios. I wouldn't really change anything about it. However, there's one like big flaw that I found with this particular deck, and that's it doesn't, like I said, your best normal summon in Archetype is pretty much Kit, but even Kit oftentimes by herself doesn't really do enough, and it's kind of ironic because a deck that focuses on Xyz summoning, doesn't even have like a 1-card rank 4 engine. A lot of the plays that you do with Spriggans rely solely on the Great Sand Sea Gold Golganda. Now that's fine, but it becomes a problem when you cannot maintain Gold Golganda because your opponent's disrupting you. So herein lies the solution to that. We are playing a scrap package in this deck, so we're on triple Scrap Raptor and 1 Scrap Chimera. The reason why we're running this is because the Scrap line basically is a 1-card rank 4 Xyz, and it gets you there without needing Gold Golganda in the event that you don't have access to Gold Golganda, or the Gold Golganda gets destroyed, mid-combo and you can't extend using Golganda. So we played triple Raptor and 1 Chimera, and I found that the scrap package works wonders in this deck. I have nothing bad to say about it. It pretty much solves a lot of the problems that I had with the deck in terms of them like not having a 1-card line that can just get them to Merrymaker. So the scrap line fixes that completely. But moving on, we played double copies of Therion King Regulus. This card is pretty strong in this deck, not only because most of the Spriggans are machine monsters, and you can go Regulus to target them, equipping them to Regulus, and now you get an Omni Negate on field for free, but you can actually search Regulus utilizing the brand new extra deck monster that Spriggans gained out of Photon Hypernova. So 2 copies of Therion King Regulus is a huge boost to this deck. Then we main deck 1 copy of the Zexal Weapon Pegasus Twin Saber. This we main deck because we are actually on a small Utopia double package in the extra deck, which we'll cover more in depth once we get there, but we play the 1 Zexal Weapon Pegasus Twin Saber. There's a combo that we have that allows us to equip this card from our deck to a Utopia monster we control, and then while this card is equipped to a Utopia monster, it serves as a monster negate when the opponent activates a monster effect on field, which is really cool. So 1 copy of that. And then to round out the monsters, we are just playing triple copies of Ash Blossom as our hand trap of choice. Like I said, the deck list is currently at 44 cards. You could cut the scrap package if you don't want to run it, and you could sub the scrap package for more hand traps. However, this is the only hand trap we play in this deck. I wish I could fit more hand traps, but right now I'm struggling trying to keep the deck below like 44 cards. I don't want to like play a 50 card list. So right now the 3 Ash is all we can fit, but if you don't want to run the scrap package, you are more than welcome to cut the scrap line and play additional hand traps if you wish. But that rounds out the monster cards. Now we're going to dive into the spells, and we're going to start things off with their most important spell, which is their field spell, and it is the Great Sand Sea Gold Golganda. So this spell is pretty cool. Basically, all Spriggans Xyz monsters you control gain 1,000 attack, which is a pretty considerable attack boost. Then it says, if you control no Spriggans Xyz monsters, you can discard a Spriggans card from your hand as cost to then special summon a Spriggans Xyz monster from your extra deck. So this deck doesn't actually hard make its Xyz monsters, which is kind of funny. It cheats them out using the Great Sand Sea Gold Golganda, and all you need is the field spell and any Spriggans card in your hand to discard. So it cheats out your Xyz monsters, which is really cool. And you're probably wondering, well, the Xyz monster doesn't have material. That is true, but remember, all of the machine monsters that are Spriggans can attach themselves to a Spriggans Xyz as material from the hand, the field, or the graveyard. So you can always reload your Spriggans Xyzes with as many materials as you'd like, which is really insane. Additionally, if a face-up Xyz monster you control leaves the field by a card effect, except during the damage step, you can target a monster the opponent controls. It cannot attack for the rest of this turn, even if this card leaves the field. So pretty much the entire archetype revolves around this field spell, and as such, we play a lot of ways to not only recur it, but also search it. So we played triple copies of Spriggans Watch, one of the coolest spells I've read in recent memory. Pretty much this serves as like an in-archetype terraforming. Basically, you get to add a Great Sandseed Golgoganda from the deck to your hand. However, if the Great Sandseed Golgoganda is in your field zone already, you can change this card's effect. And instead of searching for a field spell, you can add a Springans monster from the deck to your hand. And if you do, you send a Springans monster from your deck to the graveyard. So this card is a terraforming if you don't have the field spell. And then if you do have the field spell, it becomes a Rhoda as well as a Foolish Burial all in one card. It is absolutely insane. So we max out on this. It's foolish not to. Very strong card. Then we also play triple copies of Spriggan's Booty. Sorry, I had to. This is a continuous spell, and it's effectively the 7th, 8th, and 9th copy of the field spell because you can take this face-up card you control, send it to the graveyard, and if you do, you can activate a Great Sandseed Golgoganda from your deck or the graveyard. So this serves as additional searchers for the field spell since it's so important. However, if you already have the field spell and you don't want to use that first effect, this card's secondary effect is pretty cool because it states that if a face-up Xyz monster you control leaves the field by a card effect, keep in mind that's any card effect, whether it's yours or your opponent's, you can target an effect monster the opponent controls, and neither player can activate that effect monster's effects on field this turn. So not only is this like a pseudo effect veiler of sorts, but it also gives you additional access to your Golgoganda, which is really strong. But now moving on to the new card they got out of Hypernova, it's triple copies of Tally-Ho Spriggans, a quick play spell. Now this card, when I read it, it seems like a fan-made card because I almost couldn't believe it. What this card does is when you activate this card, you can also detach up to 3 materials from monsters you control. Now that's optional. You don't have to do that, but you're going to want to do that. And if you, then it says you can add a Spriggan's monster from the deck to your hand. So it's pretty much another Rhoda for this archetype on a quick play spell. It lets you search for any Spriggan's monster. However, at activation, you get the choice to detach up to 3 material from Xyz monsters you control. So once you add the Spriggan's monster, it says, if you do, if you detach any material at activation, you can special summon that many Spriggan's monsters from your hand and or graveyard. So this card is not only a Rhoda, but if you detached any material from Xyz monsters you control, you can special summon up to that many Spriggan's monsters from your hand or grave. Note that their effects are not negated. So this card, in addition to it being a Rhoda, it also functions like a pseudo soul charge of sorts, letting you vomit the field full of Spriggan's monsters, up to 3 of them, which is very insane. And then if that wasn't enough, while this card's in the graveyard, during your main phase, you can detach a material from an Xyz monster on the field, and if you do, you can add this card to your hand. So you can only use 1 Tally-Ho Spriggans effect per turn, but this card is absolutely incredible. When I read this card initially, I almost couldn't believe it. You definitely want to play triple copies of this card. It's very strong. But moving on, for the rest of the spells, we're on 2 copies of Sprite Smashers. A part of me wanted to run this card as a 3 of. I just, however, couldn't find the space for it, unfortunately. But 2 of it is just fine. It pretty much serves as an additional extender in the deck by allowing you to banish a Spriggan's card from the hand or graveyard. You can special summon a Spriggan's monster from your deck. However, if you banish a Therion card from the hand or graveyard, you get to special summon a Therion monster from your graveyard, which is pretty cool since we do play the King of the Regulus. That secondary effect can actually come up in certain scenarios. So we're on 2 copies of Smashers. Then we are on 1 copy of Overlay Network. This is brand new out of Maze of Memories. This is an OCG import that we just got imported to the TCG for the first time. It is a continuous spell, and it states you can activate one of the following effects. You can target a face-up monster you control for cost, and either special summon a monster with the same level from your hand or graveyard in defense position, but negate its effects, or you can target an Xyz monster you control and add a card that's attached to it to your hand. Ideally, I would like to play more copies of this card, but again, we are tight on space in the main deck. It's already 44 cards, and I didn't want to bloat the deck any further. But as a 1-of, this card is incredible, allowing you to target any monster you control, and then special summon a monster from your hand or grave of the same level, pretty much guaranteeing that you can make some type of Xyz play, which is pretty cool. Then we're on the 1 copy of Branded in High Spirits. This is pretty much the card we search off the Spriggan's kit. Like I said, when she's normal or special, you add a branded spell trap from the deck to your hand, and this is the card we search. This card is nuts. It allows us to reveal a monster in our hand, dump from our extra deck to the graveyard a Albaz fusion with the same type, and if we do, we can discard the revealed card and then search for any monster that is Fallen of Albaz or that mentions Fallen of Albaz in the text. Usually, the Branded and High Spirits will allow us to search for our copies of Kit. But moving on, with the rest of the spells, we are on one copy of Terraforming again, so we play like 10 different ways to the field spell, because it's just that important to our strategy. And then for the last few spell cards, we're on one Called by the Grave, and then one copy of Double or Nothing for the Utopia double combo that we run in our extra deck. And then to round out the last two cards in our main deck, again, rounding out a 44-card list, we're on one copy of Spriggan's Interluder, a continuous trap that pretty much serves as an Omni-Negate. By returning a Spriggan's Ecclesia we control back into our extra deck, we can negate any card or effect that the opponent activates, which is very strong. And then for the last card, we're on one copy of Gravedigger's Trap Hole in the main deck, and that is because we are running a Trap Tricks Rafflesia in our extra deck, and that is so when we're comboing off on our turn, usually we can go into the Rafflesia off the Scrap Raptor line, because it's a one-card rank 4. We make Rafflesia, and the reason why is because we don't lose to cards like Ash or Nib during our combo, because if they try to Ash us or Nib us, we can go Rafflesia and send Gravedigger's Trap Hole from our deck to grave, and then Rafflesia's effect becomes Gravedigger's Trap Hole's effect, and which will negate the Ash or the Nib, and burn the opponent for 2,000 damage. So that rounds out the main deck, guys. Now we're going to jump into the extra deck, where we play one copy of Sprind, the Iron Dash Dragon. This is the Albaz fusion for the Spriggan's archetype. It is a machine, and this is what we send off of the Branded and High Spirits spell card we main deck. So we send this to our graveyard, and then if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, during the end phase, we can either add to our hand or special summon a Spriggan's monster or Fallen of Albaz. We don't main deck a Fallen of Albaz, so usually we're going to be summoning a Spriggan's off of this during the end phase. But as a one-of, it's perfectly fine. Then we are on two copies of Spriggan's Merrymaker, pretty much the most important card in the extra deck. When this card is special summoned, from the extra deck specifically, we get to send a Spriggan's monster from our deck to the graveyard. So that is crucial for our combos, a very important card. And it does have a secondary effect where during the opponent's turn, quick effect, you can banish this card into the end phase. And if it had 2 or more material when it banished itself, you can send an Albaz fusion from the extra deck to grave. Now, that effect doesn't come up as much anymore because this is not really an Albaz focused deck. It's more of a pure Spriggan's deck list, but the first effect of this card is invaluable. And with the brand new Ecclesia monster we got out of Hypernova, Merrymaker is all that much more important, and we'll explain that shortly. Like I said, we play the one Rafflesia for the reason that I mentioned, because we play the one copy of Gravedigger's Trap Hole, that way we don't lose to Nib or Ash. One copy of Time Thief Redoer, who is pretty much an honorary Spriggan's at this point, very good rank 4 monster. And then for the Utopia double line, we play the Utopia double himself, and then the Ultimate Leo Utopia Ray is what we make using Utopia double, and pretty much Ultimate Leo Utopia Ray is a quick effect monster negate, a permanent monster negate. It also has that opponent's monster's attack permanently. But remember, we do play the Zexal weapon in our main deck. So when we do the Utopia line, it pretty much 2 level 4 monsters basically give us a 6,000 attack double monster negate, which I thought was pretty good bang for the buck. I know a lot of versions are running like the Utopic Draco Future line, but that costs 2 separate rank 4 monsters, whereas this is just 2 level 4s. Granted, you don't get the protection, but you arguably get a much bigger monster, and you get an extra negate. So I found that to be a little more valuable and a bit more cost-effective in terms of the resources you need to use to get to that point. So that's why we play the Utopia double line with Utopia Ray. But moving on, we play one copy of Spriggan's Ship X-Blower. Again, we can summon this off of the Golganda. We don't actually have to hard make this. And it's got a really cool effect where it can choose any number of zones, choose a zone, and then you detach any number of materials from this card, and then you destroy cards in that chosen zone, and the zones adjacent to it in like a T pattern almost. So it's like an area of effect. A very cool removal on this monster. And then brand new out of Hypernova, we are on 2 copies of Gigantic Champion Sargus. Now, this is not a Spriggan's monster in name. However, it is pretty much the souped up form of Spriggan's Captain Sargus that's in the main deck. But what this card is it's a generic level 8. However, it can be overlaid or Xyz summoned on top of any existing Spriggan's Xyz you control. And then you transfer the material from that to this card. Now, while this card has material, you can add a Spriggan's or a Therion card from the deck to your hand. This is a free +1. You don't have to detach any material for that. Just while it has material, once per turn, you can search for a Therion or a Spriggan's card from deck to hand. Really insane. And then if a material is detached from a monster or monsters on the field, you can target any card on the field and either destroy it or return it to the hand. So this card has some very cool effects, and it just boosts the consistency of this deck like tenfold. So I'm very glad that we have that. Then to round out the rank 8s, we play 1 Dingirsu and 1 number 38 Hope Harbinger. Dingirsu just, to help break apart boards. And then number 38 just as a nice spell negate for, decks like Branded and whatnot. And then we played 2 copies of Divine Arsenal Zeus. My apologies for the mismatch rarity. But, this is an Xyz deck, and we can make Zeus very easily, especially when all of our Spriggans can attach themselves to a Spriggan's Xyz material. We can just load up with like a Merrymaker with like 5 mats, then make Champion Sargus, then make a Zeus on top of that and have like a 6 or 7 material Zeus, which is like insane. So double Zeus is really cool in this deck. We mainly played 2 copies of it just because of Kashtira. We don't want them ripping out our sole copy. And then to round out the last card in the extra deck is 1 copy of Scrap Wyvern, again because we do main deck the Scrap Raptor combo. So that rounds out the extra deck, guys. Before we end the video, though, we'll go through the side very briefly. I'm not going to lie, the side deck could use some work, in my opinion. This is just a side deck that I've been kind of practicing with, but a part of me feels like something's missing. Maybe you guys can chime down in the comments below and let me know what you think of the side and what you'd recommend. But we're on triple copies of Kumungus, the Sticky String Kaiju in the side deck. We could run like Lava Golem. However, Spriggans is a deck that sometimes does need its normal summon, and I don't want to be in a situation where I Lava Golem the opponent and then can't normal summon because of Lava Golem's restriction. I'd rather just Kaiju something and then still be able to play. What's cool about this too is that the Champion Sargus, the rank 8 in the extra deck, allows us to target a card and bounce it when any material is detached from an Xyz. So we could theoretically target the Kaiju and bounce it back to our hand and then Kaiju something else again in the same turn, since Kaijus aren't once per turn, which is pretty cool. Then we play, this is mainly for going second. We're on 2 copies of Incredible Ecclesia, 1 Fallen of Albaz, followed by 1 Mirror Jade in our side. And this again is for the sole purpose of going second. We can side into this package, and now if we're going second, we have a really clean way of like basically fusing with the opponent's monsters to make a free Mirror Jade. If we open Incredible Ecclesia and they have monsters on field, we special Ecclesia, use Ecclesia's effect, tributing herself to special Albaz, and then Albaz can fuse away, himself and any extra deck monster to then make a free Mirror Jade. So I thought it was kind of cool. Haven't actually tested it yet, but in theory it seems like it could work. I'll have to test it and see if it actually does what I want it to, but that's what we're choosing to run in the meantime. Then we're on triple copies of Chalice. Again, Chalice is just a really strong card, whether we're going first or second. Then for our back row matchups, we made our side deck triple Cosmic Cyclone. And then to round out the side deck, we're on 2 copies of Xyz Import. Really strong card to side into if we know we're going to be going first. This allows us to target an Xyz we control and a monster the opponent controls, who has less attack than our Xyz monster, and attach that opponent's monster to our Xyz as material. So that's going to round out the Spriggans deck list, guys, for the post-Hypernova and post-Maze of Memories. Let me know what you guys think of this deck. Like I said, it's a deck that I hold dear to my heart. I absolutely love Spriggans, and I'm a huge fan. And like I said, in testing, this deck's been doing pretty great. I'm not going to say it's the greatest thing ever, but it's been doing really well, and I have a lot of fun when I play it. So, like I said, leave a comment down below on what you thought of the profile. Stay tuned for more really cool and unique Yu-Gi-Oh! Content, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Like I said, I'm working my way to that 1,000 subscriber benchmark, and I need your help to get there. This is Nick, signing out.